Hey guys, it's Nosh here. Today we're going to go through a basement suite. Now, I had a very quick glance through it and I felt that this was a perfect opportunity to walk you through what we see from the landlord side of things. So with that being said, let's get started. So this is a side-by-side duplex. And when I mean side-by-side duplex, it's basically like two bungalows put together. So this is one side, this is one side. There's an interior wall that separates the two units in this particular case. So when you're looking at these type of properties, especially older properties, this is the style it was built back in the day. There's a side entrance on both sides. So effectively you could develop 4 separate units, and if you get the zoning and bylaw permits, you could effectively make 4 legal suites, essentially turning it into a cash cow. So, and then there's a garage on the side. So it's actually quite profitable if you go that route. Now right here, I noticed that there's a pile of garbage left behind by the tenant, which is always, you know, a little bit of a sign of things to come. There was very little lawn maintenance that the tenant did. It looked like they stored some garbage behind over there. Same thing here, very little lawn maintenance, more garbage. Okay, so let's go in. Now, one thing to notice is that all the lights are left on. This is a common problem with tenants. Realistically, if they're not paying utilities, they really don't care. In this case, it looks like most lights are left on. And a mess everywhere. And there's even a transition piece in the flooring that's apparently missing. Okay, so obviously we got a couch over here, mattress over here, another mattress over there that we saw when we came in. And who doesn't want a dresser in the middle of their kitchen? So if we make our way over to the kitchen, obviously we came across 2 mattresses here. Bunch of miscellaneous garbage left around. Cabinets, at least they're not broken. The stove looks pretty dirty. Inside, about the same. The whole thing needs to be wiped down. I have seen worse. Usually, God knows, that is as long as nothing moves. Dishwasher, ooh, a hole in the island. That's never a good thing. Yeah, this is essentially one of the properties we manage. This is broken, no wonder they didn't take it. And this trim here is missing as well. Transition piece. One of the bedrooms, you know, I apologize if this doesn't work out so well with the light, but we did, it is a chandelier sort of light. We did try to give them relatively a nice place to live. You know, sock on top of the door. Who doesn't hang one there? Yeah, you know, let's take a look inside the bathroom. Jeez. So, still cleaning everywhere. That's not our shower curtain, so I'm assuming that we might find our shower curtain here if they haven't thrown it away. You know, looks like scuff marks and dirt and what have you. This might need new hardware. It seems to be flimsy. Oh, a cigarette butt. So somebody was very likely smoking here, even though the lease agreement says that it's a non-smoking unit. Now if we carry on, take a look inside this bedroom with all this crap around. So if you notice, the stairs that we came down were here. So all this is built-in storage underneath the stairs, which the owners incorporated into the suite. I think it's rather smart. I mean, if you can accommodate it and get that kind of storage here, why not? Now I have a message for anybody that's on a landlord tenancy advisory board, or anybody that's a lawmaker, politician in that respect, that might come across this video. When you paint us landlords as terrible people and slumlords trying to make a quick buck, that's really not the case. I mean, that's not what most of us are about. But for those particular lawmakers, when you make laws that jack up the property tax, when you make laws that make it hard for a landlord to recover expenses, thinking that we're immune to those costs, or thinking that, you know, they don't exist. I mean, just look at the proof in the pudding. They do exist. I mean, you know, this shouldn't be our cost and our punishment for providing a safe, reliable place for a tenant to live. I mean, we shouldn't be punished for providing housing. I mean, especially when lawmakers are panicking, saying we don't have enough housing. I mean, you know, you got to work with us, right? And in this particular case, how do you go after the tenant? Tenant has vacated. Now, assuming I came into this property while the tenant was here and I saw substantial damages, there are even laws out there that say I cannot serve her legal documents until after she vacates. Okay, she's vacated. Well, where is this tenant now, right? Like, where am I going to find her? I got her license. Okay, great. If I try to go after her, I'm spending $2,000, $3,000, and how much time through legal fees trying to pursue her and possibly garnish wages if she even has a job left. So now, when it came to this tenant, she failed to pay rent on time. Now, in Edmonton, Alberta, you can charge $10 per day as a late payment fee that is incurred from a landlord to a tenant. So every day that they're late to pay the rent, you can charge them $10. That's used as a deterrent, not a fee to pay rent late. The idea is not to extort the tenant for an extra $10 a day. The idea is to put a little bit of a reminder that paying rent is not optional, right? Ultimately, there's mortgages that we need to pay. So when a tenant pays late, we need to borrow that money or pull that money from somewhere else, which means we disrupt any interest that we could have made off of that money. Perhaps we're paying interest to utilize that money, if it's in a line of credit or whatever it might be. But in that particular scenario, we are using our own money to cover costs that would have been covered if the tenant paid rent on time. In this case, the tenant initially asked for a couple more days. We came by, we saw that there was some kind of attempt to start packing. Instead of trying to go hammer to fist, you know, we're gonna force this eviction, yada, yada, yada. It's a lengthy process. If you push the tenant enough, they might decide to challenge you on that, in which they could drag off an eviction process by a month or 2 months, sometimes even 3 months. If they don't pay rent during those 3 months, you're not collecting rent, you can't force them out, you can't change the locks. It becomes an expensive process. So if you can work with your tenant, always work with your tenant. So in this case, we granted a few extra days. It brought us to May 20th, which is today. We came in. This is the way we found the unit. I haven't yet touched anything. I do this on top of my own portfolio. I do this on top of my own primary job and source of employment and construction here and there. So I do juggle a lot of things. My partner certainly helps with the property management aspect of things. We have a roommate who's a good friend of ours who helps with cleaning. I'll be moving all this stuff out with him, bringing them in, clean up this whole place, try to get it done by the end of the weekend. I mean, in between going back and forth from my regular job, right? We got to get this cleaned up for the owners so that we can try to rent it out for them so that they don't skip a beat on rent. That's the ultimate goal. She hasn't paid anything for this month. We did collect the security deposit, so technically speaking, the owners do have the rent for this month, which is what they're using as from the security deposit. But that means all of this falls onto their plate in terms of cost. The problem here is that in places like Ontario and BC, a landlord cannot charge a security deposit. A landlord can only charge the first month and last month rent. Now, that becomes an issue when, look at this. I mean, the tenant has paid the first month and has paid the last month's rent in the form of a security deposit, but consider the same thing. Who pays for all this? Normally, landlords are stuck with the bill. That's really what it comes down to. If the owners were paying the utilities on this property, and let's say there's a leaking toilet or a running faucet or any of that nature, well, somebody's got to cover that additional utilities, and we're talking a couple grand just in that alone. You know, we can try to sell some of this stuff in order to obtain a little bit of money to cover the cost of restoring this unit back to its original condition, and that's completely legal here in Alberta. But I mean, who's gonna buy any of this? How much time are you gonna waste trying to find somebody to pick this up for what, $100? I mean, you got to think about storing it. You know, like, where are you gonna store it? Realistically, full disclosure, all this stuff is going to the dump. You know, I mean, if this was during the daytime, I'd be clearing this stuff out right now, but realistically, it's 10 o'clock at night, and instead of being at home with my family, I have to deal with all this, right? So, of course, there is, you know, I am being compensated for it, so it's not like it's, you know, woe is me, but at the same token, somebody has to pay for all this, right? I just noticed a hole in the wall. We have side-by-side duplexes, and we have had tenants that leave the suite in this kind of condition. It does happen. Fortunately, not as often, but it happens often enough. So when we try to give tenants a beautiful unit, a nice rental unit to live in, sometimes this is how they repay us. And, you know, we can screen all we want. We can, you know, call our references and do all our due diligence, but ultimately, until the tenant actually leaves, you really don't have a full understanding of what kind of tenant they are. We do want to do good. We do want to give good quality units to tenants to live in. I mean, nobody wants to hand somebody the keys for a shitty property. I mean, and if you do, and if you are a slumlord, well, first of all, get off this channel. And second of all, learn a thing or two about real estate, because it is possible to make good money and have your integrity and morals and ethics remain unchallenged, right? So when you talk about being a landlord, when you talk about owning properties and real estate, it's not all glitz and glamour and, you know, collect the gold, take checks to the bank, yay. That's a Hollywood fantasy. Realistically speaking, you deal with this stuff from time to time. And you got to know how to deal with this stuff. If you're trying to do it on your own, well, first you got to smash that like and subscribe button. And second of all, you got to go get yourself a reliable truck. And I'm talking about a Ford. That's the hole in the wall that I noticed earlier. That's a niche that was hiding throughout the video. And this is the kitchen. Everything's been cleared out, nothing's been cleaned. I left the soap there just so we can clean our hands. They obviously didn't clean up behind the appliances. It took me the last 2.5 hours, or roughly, to clear out all this crap. Forgot miscellaneous things hanging up on the shower. You know, something I will say is that when you go to these rental properties to clean up after the tenants leave, bring your own toilet roll. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, tenants always seem to take their toilet rolls with them. And the bedroom. Okay, so this is round one. Got all this stuff into the truck. Got a little bit more to go. We're simply gonna take the mattresses, throw them on top, strap it all down, and then just got a little bit left to go. Like I said, you know, if you're gonna be doing this semi-regularly, you might wanna invest in a truck, especially if you're looking after rental properties. It certainly helps. You come across this stuff more often than you think. So this is what we're looking at. Just a quick thing. I left my coffee in the truck and it's now cold. If you haven't seen my basement video, that's why when we build basements, we love putting in those microwaves. I love putting in those microwaves. It's always helpful. All right, round two. And that's pretty much the last of it. Okay, so now that the basement has been cleaned and a few repairs have been taking place, I'm just waiting for mud to dry here and then I can paint it. But to give you the gist, this is what it looks like after it's been cleaned. So you can see we did try to give tenants a pretty beautiful suite at a price tag of $1,200. You know, you got your own island here, full-size dishwasher, spot for brooms or garbage or dustpans, a range hood that actually exhausts instead of just recirculating, bottom deep freeze, 2 full-size bedrooms, obviously with egress windows for safety. This is just the electrical panel area. It's just a closet we made. Put the doorknob back on. The bathroom area, fix the light issues. Cleaned up everything, sanitized everything. Hey, hey. So, small little scuff marks like this. When I got the paint out, as I'm going over the drywall patch in the living room area, you could just hit it with a little bit of paint if it's not much of a dent. Okay, so this is the kind of mud that I use to patch up small little holes in the wall. You can find it at usually any local hardware store. There's different versions of it. It's basically pre-mixed, ready to use, right out of the container. Drywall mud. It's a couple bucks, realistically speaking. Any kind of dimple in the wall, any dent, any scuff, just apply a very thin coat over it, let it dry, sand it down, and then paint over it. And as long as you did a pretty decent job, it should be okay. Now keep in mind that if you completely haggard, let's say that hole in the wall that I patched up, if that was your first attempt and it completely turned out to be crap, then realistically speaking, you could always call in a professional mudder and taper, ask him to fix it. You spend a bit more money, but it's the learning process. You're not gonna be terrible at something forever. The more you practice, the better you become. Especially if you're gonna do this long-term or you're gonna develop a portfolio, you wanna learn how to do minor things like this. Change a doorknob, repair holes in the wall. Those kind of things come up quite often. If you know how to do that, you save money, and money that you save is also considered money that you earn, right? Because you're not paying somebody, so. Okay, so now that it's finished, you know, there's a sense of relief. It's cleaned, it's presentable. We got things plugged into the outlets to create a good odor so that it smells good in here. You know, we obviously aired out the place, got fresh air going. So all these things combined create a presentable unit to show to prospective tenants. Now we have a few viewings scheduled for later this evening, as well as 2 scheduled for tomorrow. You know, sometimes they don't show, sometimes they do. So, you know, that's a whole different issue on its own. But as long as they show up, we have a suite to present to them. Of course, there are certain minor things that we are fixing, like for example, the drywall mud and whatnot on the wall. But the reason why I like to clean the unit as fast as we can is because once it's clean, people can start coming in and viewing the place and appreciating the space and determine whether they can see themselves living in this particular unit. Now, obviously with minor holes and, you know, things going on here and there, those are minor touch-ups. And in between viewings, we can always work on addressing those issues. So the biggest thing is getting the prospective tenants in to view the property so that you can start that process, putting it online, getting it out there, using places like Renfaster, Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, however you got to advertise it, going ahead with that. If you have any other suggestions on places to advertise, leave it in the comment section below. Maybe we can all benefit from it. But those are 3 of the primary sources we use. We've been using it for years. It's worked out well. If we were so focused on touching up all the repair issues first before cleaning, well, they come in and they view a property that's a real mess, and that's the impression they get left with. In this particular case, the unit's clean. There's minor scuffs, like, for example, the hole on the wall, but those things will be addressed in between the viewings. So eventually, after 1 or 2 days, we'll get to a stage where it doesn't even exist anymore because it's been dealt with. So every person that views the suite after that not only sees a clean place, but doesn't see any kind of repairs going on either. So the biggest priority is getting people in there to view the space. People are not going to be so concerned about, you know, a couple patches here and there. They're going to expect and understand that, you know, you're just doing what you can to get it into a prestige condition for when they move in. All these things leave a tenant with a positive impression on the property. You know, clean space, landlord is here, he's doing repairs. You know, anything that needs to be addressed is addressed now. When they come in, we'll do a complete walkthrough inspection. We'll notice any kind of deficiencies. We'll put it down on paper. We encourage them to take photos. We obviously take photos. And that way, when they move out, there's no confusion as to what was caused and what was not. You know, what was there already and what wasn't. If it's marked down on the walkthrough inspection, there's no disputing it. It protects the tenant so that a landlord can't say, hey, you know what? You damaged my flooring. And the tenant turns around and says, no, this was already there. I mean, you already had all this scratch marks here to begin with. Those kind of things you want to address, nip it in the bud right from the beginning so that there's no confusion. And whenever you're in doubt, take photos. Save it in a folder on your desktop, on your computer, on your laptop. Send it to yourself in an email, put it in a folder. Do whatever you got to do to create some form of paper trail, both from the landlord and from the tenant perspective, so that when you move out, as a tenant, you're not worried that your landlord's going to charge you for something that you didn't cause. And as a landlord, you know you're covered that if you do charge a tenant and they dispute the claim, you have all the evidence and sufficient documents that you require in order to prove and present to a landlord and tenancy dispute resolution service or something of the similar nature that, no, my tenant created this damage and I incurred this cost in order to repair it to the same condition that the tenant received it when they moved in. So that's the purpose of all this stuff. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch my video. I hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button down below. It helps me to grow my channel and continue putting out great content for you guys. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you.